The silence in Millbrook Community Church was deafening as I stood at the podium, holding the manila envelope that would destroy my sister's perfect reputation forever. Ashley sat in the front pew next to Tyler, her fiancé and the pastor's son, wearing that same smug smile she'd worn when she threw my grandmother's purity ring in the trash 3 years ago. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow, I've saved something extra special for you. Some promises, I said, my voice carrying clearly through. The sanctuary are meant to be kept. Others are meant to be exposed. The color drained from Ashley's face as I opened the envelope, and for the first time in our lives, I held all the power. But to understand how we got to that moment of reckoning, you need to know how it all began in our small Tennessee town, where everyone knew everyone's business, and reputation was everything. Growing up in Millbrook, Tennessee was like living in a snow globe where the same people, the same expectations, and the same judgments swirled around you every single day. Our family, the Carters, had been pillars of Millbrook Community Church for 3 generations. My father, Robert Carter, served as a deacon, and my mother, Linda, led the women's Bible study group every Wednesday evening. We lived in a pristine, colonial house on Maple Street, where the lawn was always perfectly manicured and the white picket fence never had a chip in its paint. Ashley was 2 years older than me and had inherited every perfect gene our family had to offer. Golden blonde hair that curled just right, bright blue eyes that sparkled when she laughed, and a smile that could charm anyone from the grocery store clerk to the church board members. She was the daughter every parent in Millbrook wished they had, honor roll student, head cheerleader, youth group leader, and destined to marry Tyler Brooks, the pastor's son who was as handsome and seemingly pure as she appeared to be. Then there was me, Rachel Carter, the younger sister who always seemed to exist in Ashley's shadow. My hair was a mousy brown that never held a curl, my eyes were an unremarkable hazel, and while I wasn't unattractive, I certainly wasn't the showstopper that Ashley was. I was the studious one, the responsible one, the one who actually meant it when I made commitments and promises. Where Ashley dazzled, I endured. Where she performed, I believed. The purity ring that would eventually become the symbol of our family's greatest shame had been our grandmother's. Margaret Carter had worn it as a young woman in the 1940s, a simple silver band with a small cross and the inscription, "True Love, Waits," engraved in delicate script. When Grandma Margaret passed away when I was 14, she left specific instructions in her will about the ring. It was to go to the granddaughter who demonstrated the strongest commitment to Christian values and purity. Everyone assumed it would go to Ashley. She was the obvious choice after all, with her public proclamations of faith and her highly visible relationship with Tyler that everyone held up as the gold standard of Christian courtship. But Grandma Margaret had been watching more carefully than anyone realized. She saw past Ashley's performance to her heart, and she saw something in me that others missed. I'll never forget the day Mom sat us both down in the living room and read Grandma's letter aloud. "To my dear granddaughter Rachel," she began, and I could see Ashley's confident smile falter slightly. "I leave my purity ring to you because I have seen your quiet faithfulness, your genuine heart, and your true commitment to the values we hold dear. Wear it with pride, and remember that real purity comes from the heart, not from appearances." Ashley's face went through a series of emotions that day: surprise, hurt, anger, and finally, something I'd never seen before: pure resentment directed at me. She recovered quickly, of course, offering me a hug and congratulations that felt hollow even to my 14-year-old heart. But I caught the look she exchanged with Mom, a look that said this decision was wrong and would be corrected somehow. When Mom slipped the ring onto my finger, it fit perfectly, as if it had been waiting for me all along. The silver was warm against my skin, and I felt a connection to Grandma Margaret that transcended death. This wasn't just jewelry. It was a sacred trust, a family legacy, and a public commitment to the values that shaped our community. For 2 years, I wore that ring with pride. It became part of my identity in Millbrook, where everyone knew the story of Margaret Carter's purity ring and the granddaughter who'd been chosen to carry on the tradition. At youth group meetings, Pastor Hayes would sometimes point to me as an example of unwavering faith. During purity ceremonies at church, I'd stand with the other committed young women, my ring catching the light as I raised my hand to make my vows. Ashley seemed to have moved past her initial disappointment. She was busy with her own life anyway, starring in school plays, dating Tyler openly with our parents' full approval, and preparing for her future as the perfect pastor's wife. She had her own purity ring now, a more modern one with a larger diamond that Tyler had given her for her 16th birthday. It was showier than mine, more expensive, and she made sure everyone noticed it. But I should have seen the signs that Ashley's resentment was only growing beneath the surface. The little comments she'd make about how some people need symbols to remember their commitments. The way she'd introduce me to her friends as my little sister, the one with the family ring. The subtle eye rolls when people praised my faithfulness in front of her. Everything changed the summer I turned 16. Ashley had just graduated high school and was preparing for her freshman year at Tennessee State University. I was excited about finally being the only Carter sister at home, finally having a chance to step out of her shadow and maybe, just maybe, find my own identity. That's when I met Connor Mitchell. Connor's family had moved to Millbrook from Nashville when his father got a job at the bank. Connor was my age, a rising junior like me, but he was different from the boys I'd grown up with. He was thoughtful where they were boisterous, genuine where they were performative. He had dark hair that always looked slightly messy, kind brown eyes, and a way of listening that made you feel like you were the only person in the world. We met at a youth group picnic at the lake house that the church owned about 20 minutes outside of town. While the other kids were playing volleyball or showing off on jet skis, Connor and I found ourselves sitting on the dock, talking about everything and nothing. He asked me about my ring, not in the judgmental way that some people did, but with genuine curiosity about what it meant to me. "It's not just about waiting," I explained, watching the sunlight dance on the water. "It's about believing that some things are sacred, that love should be built on more than just physical attraction." Connor nodded thoughtfully. "I respect that. I really respect that. Most people our age think it's old-fashioned, but I think there's something beautiful about having that kind of conviction." That conversation marked the beginning of something special. Connor started attending our church regularly, and soon we were spending more and more time together. Our parents approved, especially since Connor came from a good family and was clearly serious about his faith. Pastor Hayes often spoke approvingly about our relationship, holding us up as an example of how young Christian couples should conduct themselves. Ashley watched all of this from a distance when she came home from college for visits. She'd been at Tennessee State for a semester when Connor and I started dating, and I could see her evaluating him during family dinners, sizing him up in that calculating way she had. But she seemed genuinely happy for me, even going out of her way to tell Connor how special I was and how lucky he was to have me. Connor and I were together for almost 2 years. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. We went to homecoming together, attended church events as a couple, and spent countless evenings sitting on my family's front porch talking about our dreams for the future. He respected my commitment completely, never pushing or making me feel like I was missing out on something. Instead, he embraced it, often telling me that he was waiting too, that what we had was worth preserving. By my senior year, people in Millbrook were already talking about Connor and me the way they'd once talked about Ashley and Tyler. We were the couple everyone expected would get married after college, settle down in town, and raise the next generation of faithful Millbrook children. I was finally stepping out of Ashley's shadow and creating my own story. That's when Ashley came home from college with devastating news that would change everything. It was a Friday evening in March, just 2 months before my high school graduation. Ashley had driven down from Tennessee State, supposedly for a weekend visit, but something was off about her demeanor. She seemed restless, almost agitated during dinner. She kept checking her phone and barely touched Mom's famous pot roast. After dinner, she asked me to come up to her room. "I need to talk to you about something important," she said, her voice uncharacteristically serious. I followed her upstairs, expecting maybe some sister-to-sister advice about college or boys. Ashley's room was exactly as she'd left it when she went away to school, a shrine to her high school achievements. Cheerleading trophies lined one shelf, honor society certificates covered one wall, and photos of her and Tyler dominated her dresser. Ashley sat on her bed and patted the space next to her. "Rachel, sit down. This is going to be hard to hear." My stomach dropped. Nothing good ever started with those words. "It's about Connor," she continued, pulling out her phone. "I didn't know how to tell you this, but I can't let you keep living in a fantasy." She turned the phone toward me, and my world shattered. The photo showed Connor, clearly recognizable, kissing another girl at what looked like a college party. They were pressed against a wall, her hands in his hair, his arms wrapped around her waist. It was unmistakably intimate, unmistakably wrong. "I'm so sorry, Rachel," Ashley said, her voice filled with what sounded like genuine sympathy. "A friend of mine at Tennessee State sent me this. Apparently, Connor's been coming to parties there, telling people he's single. This girl, Jessica, she thinks she's his girlfriend." I stared at the phone, unable to process what I was seeing. This couldn't be Connor. The Connor I knew would never do this. The Connor who respected my values, who said he was waiting too, who told me I was special every single day. "There's more," Ashley said softly, swiping to the next photo. This one showed Connor in what appeared to be a dorm room, shirtless, with the same girl curled against his chest. They looked comfortable together, familiar, like this wasn't their first time. "I know this is horrible," Ashley continued, "but I thought you should know before you waste any more time on him, before you give him something precious that he clearly doesn't deserve." I felt like I was drowning. The room seemed to spin around me as everything I thought I knew about Connor, about our relationship, about my own judgment, crumbled into dust. "How long?" I managed to whisper. "From what Jessica told my friend, about 6 months. She thinks she's been dating him exclusively since last fall." 6 months. That meant he'd been leading a double life for half of our relationship. While I was defending our choices to friends who said we were too serious too young, while I was proudly wearing my purity ring and talking about our future together, he was playing college student with another girl. Ashley put her arm around me as I started to cry. "I know it hurts," she said, "but you'll get through this. You're stronger than you know." The confrontation with Connor happened 3 days later. I'd spent the weekend in a fog, going through the motions of normal life while my heart broke, over and over again. I kept staring at the photos Ashley had shown me, trying to find some explanation that would make sense of what I was seeing. Monday after school, Connor came by the house as he always did. We usually spent an hour or two on the front porch before he had to go home for dinner. But this time, I led him around to the backyard where we wouldn't be overheard. "I need to ask you something," I said, my voice steadier than I felt. Connor smiled that easy smile that had always made my heart flutter. "Sure, anything." I pulled out my phone and showed him the first photo. His smile disappeared instantly, replaced by a look of panic and guilt that told me everything I needed to know. "Rachel, I can explain," he started. But I held up my hand to stop him. "How long have you been lying to me?" He ran his hands through his hair, that gesture I'd always found endearing now seeming like a tell. "It's not what you think. Jessica, she's just... It's complicated." "Complicated how?" Are you dating her or not? Connor looked everywhere, except at my face. We've hung out a few times, but it doesn't mean anything. You're the one I care about, Rachel. You're the one I want to be with. While you're sleeping with her? His silence was answer enough. I pulled the purity ring off my finger and held it in my palm. It had never felt heavier than it did in that moment, weighted with broken promises and shattered trust. I thought you understood what this meant to me, I said. I thought you respected my choice. I do respect it, Connor said desperately. What I do with Jessica has nothing to do with what we have together. The casual way he dismissed his betrayal, the way he could separate his actions from their meaning, hit me like a physical blow. This wasn't the boy I'd fallen in love with. Maybe that boy had never existed at all. Get out, I said quietly. Rachel, please. Let me explain. Get out, I said louder, and this time he heard the finality in my voice. I watched him walk away, probably forever, and felt something inside me break that I wasn't sure could ever be fixed. That night, I sat in my room holding Grandma Margaret's ring and crying until I had no tears left. Everything I'd believed about Connor, about love, about my own judgment, was gone. The ring that had once been a symbol of my convictions now felt like a reminder of my naivety. Ashley knocked on my door around midnight. Hey, she said softly. Can I come in? I nodded, and she sat on the edge of my bed. I know you're hurting, she said. I know this feels like the end of the world right now, but you're going to be okay. You're going to be stronger because of this. I wanted to believe her. I wanted to feel like there was some purpose to this pain, some lesson that would make it worthwhile. But mostly, I just felt hollow. I keep thinking about all the times he told me he respected my choice, I said. All the times he said I was special for waiting. Was he laughing at me the whole time? Ashley was quiet for a moment. Some people say what they think you want to hear. It doesn't mean you were wrong to believe in something pure. She reached over and took the ring from my nightstand where I'd placed it after Connor left. You know, she said, examining it in the lamplight, Grandma always said this ring was about more than just physical purity. She said it was about keeping your heart pure, too, not letting other people's failures corrupt who you are. I nodded, not trusting my voice. Maybe, Ashley continued. Connor was never worthy of this. She gestured to the ring. Maybe Grandma knew you'd need to learn the difference between someone who talks about commitment and someone who lives it. She handed the ring back to me. Don't let him take this away from you. Don't let his lies make you doubt something that's real. In that moment, I felt closer to Ashley than I had in years. She understood my pain in a way that surprised me, and her words carried a wisdom that helped ease the ache in my chest. I slipped the ring back onto my finger. Thank you, I whispered. That's what sisters are for, she said, kissing my forehead, before leaving me alone with my thoughts. The next few weeks were a blur of avoiding Connor at school, dealing with the inevitable gossip when word got out that we'd broken up, and trying to rebuild my sense of self after such a fundamental betrayal. Ashley called me almost every day from college, checking in and offering support in ways that reminded me why I'd always looked up to her, despite our differences. Connor tried to win me back several times, showing up at church, leaving notes, in my locker, even calling the house when he knew I'd be home. But every time I looked at him, all I could see were those photos of him with Jessica. The boy I'd trusted with my heart had revealed himself to be someone else entirely. Graduation came and went, and soon I was preparing for my own freshman year at Tennessee State University. Ashley was going into her junior year and had offered to help me navigate college life. For the first time in our relationship, I felt like we were truly sisters rather than competitors. But as I packed my bags for college that summer, I had no idea that Ashley was harboring secrets of her own. Secrets that would make Connor's betrayal look like a minor deception. Secrets that would eventually lead me to understand that sometimes the people closest to us are the ones capable of the deepest betrayal. The foundation of everything I believed about my family, my sister, and the values we claimed to share was about to crumble in ways I never could have imagined. And when it did, the lessons I'd learned about keeping my heart pure would be tested in ways that Grandma Margaret never could have foreseen. College life at Tennessee State University was supposed to be my fresh start, my chance to reinvent myself away from the whispers and pitying looks that had followed me through the final months of high school. Ashley had helped me move into Morrison Hall, a sprawling brick dormitory that housed mostly freshmen, and she seemed genuinely excited to have me on campus with her. "You're going to love it here," she said as we carried the last of my boxes up 3 flights of stairs. College is so different from high school. Nobody cares about your past or what happened back home. You can be whoever you want to be. My roommate turned out to be Natalie Kim, a pre-med student from Memphis with a sharp wit and an infectious laugh. She was everything I wasn't: confident, outspoken, and completely uninterested in the conservative Christian culture that had shaped my entire life. When she saw me unpacking my Bible and placing my grandmother's purity ring in the small jewelry box on my dresser, she raised an eyebrow but didn't comment. "So, you're Ashley Carter's little sister," she said instead. "I've heard about you." My heart sank. Even here, I couldn't escape Ashley's shadow. "Nothing bad," Natalie added quickly, seeing my expression. "Just that you're the smart one, the responsible one. Ashley talks about you all the time in the classes we have together." This surprised me. Ashley and Natalie had classes together? Ashley was a communications major with a focus on public relations, while Natalie was studying biochemistry. Their academic paths shouldn't have overlapped at all. "What classes?" I asked casually. Natalie paused, seeming to realize she'd said something wrong. "Oh, just some general education requirements. You know how it is." But I could tell she was being evasive, and that planted the first tiny seed of doubt in my mind. Ashley had always been open about her college experience, sharing stories about her professors, her coursework, her study groups. Why would she be taking classes she hadn't mentioned? The first few weeks of college passed in a blur of orientation activities, registration confusion, and the overwhelming task of learning to live independently. I threw myself into my studies with the same dedication I'd always shown, determined to maintain the academic excellence that had always been my identity. My major was English literature with a minor in religious studies, and I found genuine joy in analyzing the great works of faith and exploring how literature had shaped spiritual thought throughout history. Ashley checked on me regularly, stopping by my dorm or meeting me for lunch in the student union. She seemed different than she had in high school, more relaxed somehow, as if college had freed her from some invisible pressure she'd been carrying. She'd let her hair grow longer and had started wearing makeup in a more sophisticated way that made her look older, more mature. "You seem happy," I told her one afternoon as we shared a pizza in the food court. "I am happy," she said, and her smile seemed genuine. "College has been good to me. I've found my people, you know? People who get me." "What about Tyler?" I asked. "How's the long-distance thing working out?" Ashley's expression shifted almost imperceptibly, a flicker of something I couldn't quite read crossing her face before she recovered. "Tyler's great," she said. "He's so busy with his senior year and preparing for seminary that we don't get to talk as much as we'd like. But that's okay. We're both focused on our studies right now." Something about her tone felt rehearsed, like she'd practiced this answer. But I was still so grateful for her support during my own heartbreak that I didn't want to question her too closely about her relationship. The first real crack in my perception of Ashley came about 6 weeks into the semester. I'd been struggling with my introduction to philosophy class, finding the abstract concepts difficult to grasp, and my professor had recommended that I find a study partner. Natalie suggested I ask around the junior and senior level classes since older students might have already taken the course. That's how I ended up in the library's third-floor study area on a Tuesday evening, looking for students who might be willing to help. As I wandered between the stacks, I heard familiar laughter coming from one of the private study rooms. The door was slightly ajar, and through the gap, I could see Ashley sitting very close to a guy I didn't recognize. They weren't studying. The table in front of them held no books, no papers, just 2 coffee cups that had clearly been forgotten. Ashley's hand was resting on his thigh, and they were speaking in the low, intimate whispers of people who didn't want to be overheard. I froze, unsure of what to do. This was obviously a private moment, but it was also obviously not Tyler. This guy was tall and lean with dark hair and the kind of confident posture that suggested he was used to getting attention. More importantly, he was looking at Ashley the way Tyler used to look at her, and she was looking back at him with an expression I'd never seen on her face before. Heat and hunger, and something that definitely wasn't appropriate for a girl who was supposed to be in a committed relationship with her high school sweetheart. I backed away quickly, my heart pounding. There had to be an innocent explanation. Maybe this was just a friend, someone from one of her classes. Maybe they were working on a project together and had taken a break. Maybe I'd misread the situation entirely, but even as I tried to rationalize what I'd seen, I couldn't shake the image of Ashley's hand on that stranger's leg, or the way they'd been looking at each other. I didn't confront her about it. Instead, I started paying closer attention to Ashley's behavior, looking for signs that might confirm or deny what I suspected. She was definitely busier than she'd been in previous semesters, often unavailable when I called and vague about her whereabouts when we did talk. When I asked about specific classes or professors, she sometimes seemed confused, as if she couldn't remember what she'd told me about her schedule. The second incident happened 3 weeks later. I'd finished my evening classes and was walking back to my dorm when I saw Ashley's car in the parking lot of an off-campus apartment complex called Cedar Grove. This was significant because Ashley lived in university housing, and I couldn't think of any reason she'd be at Cedar Grove unless she was visiting someone. I sat in the campus coffee shop across the street for 2 hours, nursing a single latte and pretending to study while keeping an eye on Ashley's distinctive blue Honda Civic. She didn't emerge until almost 11 o'clock, and she wasn't alone. The same dark-haired guy I'd seen her with in the library walked her to her car, and this time there was no mistaking the nature of their relationship. He kissed her goodnight, not a friendly peck on the cheek, but a long, passionate kiss that left no doubt about their intimacy. My world tilted on its axis as I watched my sister, the same woman who'd comforted me through Connor's betrayal, who'd spoken so beautifully about keeping one's heart pure, who was engaged to marry the pastor's son, embrace another man in a way that was anything but pure. I drove back to my dorm in a daze, my mind racing with questions and implications. How long had this been going on? Did Tyler know? Did anyone know? And perhaps most importantly, how could Ashley have looked me in the eye and talked about commitment and purity when she was living a lie that made Connor's deception look trivial in comparison? That night, I lay awake staring at the ceiling, while Natalie slept peacefully in the bed across from mine. I kept thinking about all the conversations Ashley and I had shared, all the advice she'd given me about relationships and faith and staying true to my values. Had it all been meaningless? Had she been laughing at me internally, the same way? I'd wondered if Connor had been laughing at me. The next morning, I called Ashley and suggested we meet for breakfast. She agreed readily, seeming genuinely happy to hear from me. We met at a small cafe near campus, the kind of place that served enormous pancakes and strong coffee to sleep-deprived college students. Ashley looked radiant in a way that should have made me happy for her, but instead filled me with a sick dread. Her skin was glowing, her eyes were bright, and she had the unmistakable air of a woman who was getting regular attention from someone who adored her. "You look really good," I said carefully, studying her face for any signs of guilt or discomfort. "Thank you," she said, practically beaming. "I've been working out more, eating better. Junior year is really agreeing with me." "How are things with Tyler?" I asked, watching her reaction closely. This time, I definitely saw the flicker of discomfort before she composed herself. "Tyler's good," she said, but her voice lacked the warmth it had carried moments before. "He's so focused on his studies and preparing for seminary. Sometimes I feel like I barely exist to him anymore." This was new. In all the years Ashley had been dating Tyler, she'd never expressed anything but complete satisfaction with their relationship. Even during the difficult periods that all couples experience, she'd always spoken about their challenges as temporary obstacles that would strengthen their bond. "That must be hard," I said sympathetically. "Long-distance relationships are tough." "It's not just the distance," Ashley said, and for a moment she seemed to forget her usual careful composure. "It's like he's already moved on to the next phase of his life, and I'm just supposed to wait around until he's ready to include me in it. We barely talk anymore, and when we do, it's all about his classes or his internship at his father's church. He never asks about my life or my dreams or what I want." There was real pain in her voice, genuine frustration that made me feel a pang of sympathy for her. But it also made me angry. If she was unhappy with Tyler, if she felt neglected or unappreciated, there were honest ways to address those problems. Cheating wasn't one of them. "Have you talked to him about how you're feeling?" I asked. Ashley laughed, but it wasn't a happy sound. "Tyler doesn't want to hear about my feelings, Rachel. He wants the perfect pastor's wife who'll support his ministry and raise his children and never have needs of her own. That's what everyone expects from me." I could hear the bitterness beneath her words, and part of me understood it. Ashley had always been held to impossibly high standards, always expected to be the perfect daughter, the perfect student, the perfect girlfriend. But understanding her frustration didn't excuse her choices. "So what are you going to do?" asked. Ashley's mask slipped back into place so quickly that I almost missed the vulnerability she'd just shown me. "Nothing," she said firmly. "I'm going to do what's expected of me. Tyler and I will get married after graduation, and I'll be the perfect pastor's wife that everyone wants me to be." But even as she said the words, I could see in her eyes that she didn't believe them. Or maybe she didn't want to believe them. After breakfast, I walked back to my dorm with more questions than answers. Ashley was clearly involved with someone else, but she seemed equally clearly trapped by the expectations placed on her. Did that justify her actions? Did being unhappy in one relationship give someone the right to seek comfort in another without ending the first one? I thought about Connor and how his betrayal had shattered my faith in love and commitment. At least Connor hadn't been engaged. At least he wasn't planning to build a life and a ministry on a foundation of lies. Over the next few weeks, I found myself caught in an impossible position. I felt like I was keeping Ashley's secret even, though she hadn't explicitly told me about it, and the weight of that knowledge was crushing. Every time Tyler's name came up in conversation, every time someone back home asked about Ashley's wedding plans, every time I saw them together on social media looking like the perfect Christian couple, I felt complicit in the deception. I also started noticing things I'd previously missed. Ashley's explanation for her busy schedule didn't always add up. She claimed to be studying for exams that her major didn't require, attending meetings for organizations she'd never mentioned joining. When I asked specific questions about her classes or professors, she sometimes gave answers that contradicted things she'd said before. The most telling moment came when Tyler called the dorm room looking for Ashley. I'd been studying alone when the phone rang, and I answered without thinking. "Hey, babe," Tyler's familiar voice said. "I've been trying to reach you all week. Are you okay?" "Tyler, it's Rachel," I said quickly. "Ashley's not here right now." "Oh, hey, Rachel. Do you know where she is?" I've called her cell phone like 10 times and she's not answering. I was starting to worry that something was wrong. I glanced at the clock. It was 9:30 on a Thursday night, exactly the time when Ashley claimed she and Tyler had their weekly phone dates. "I'm not sure where she is," I said honestly. "Maybe she's at the library." "Maybe," Tyler said, but he sounded doubtful. "When you see her, can you tell her I called and that I love her?" "Of course," I promised. After I hung up, I sat staring at the phone for a long time. Tyler clearly had no idea that Ashley was avoiding his calls, had no idea that she was probably with another man while he was trying desperately to maintain their connection across the distance. That night, when Ashley came back to the dorm, I told her about Tyler's call. She listened with a carefully neutral expression, but I could see the guilt flickering in her eyes. "I'll call him back tomorrow," she said. I was at study group and didn't want to be rude by answering my phone. "Which study group?" I asked, probably more sharply than I intended. Ashley's eyes narrowed slightly. "My communications theory study group. Why?" "Just curious," I said, but we both knew I was testing her. That weekend, everything came to a head in a way I never could have anticipated. Ashley had told our parents she was staying on campus to work on a major project, but she'd told me she was going home to Millbrook for a surprise visit with Tyler. Neither story was true. I discovered this when Natalie mentioned seeing Ashley at a house party off campus on Saturday night. Not just seeing her, but seeing her with the same dark-haired guy I'd observed before, and seeing them behave in a way that left no doubt about the nature of their relationship. "They were all over each other," Natalie said as we walked to Sunday morning church services. "I mean, I know college relationships can be intense, but wow, they couldn't keep their hands off each other." "Did you know the guy?" I asked, trying to keep my voice casual. "Marcus Rivera," Natalie said. "He's a senior, plays intramural soccer. Really popular guy. I heard he's got a job lined up at some big marketing firm in Atlanta after graduation." Marcus Rivera. Finally, Ashley's secret had a name. "Natalie," I said carefully. "You know Ashley's engaged, right? To someone back home?" Natalie stopped, walking, and stared at me. "What? No way. She's never mentioned being engaged. I've seen her with Marcus all semester, and she definitely acts single." The pieces were starting to come together in a way that made me feel sick. Ashley wasn't just cheating on Tyler. She was living a completely double life. At school, she was single and available, free to date whomever she chose. Back home, she was the perfect pastor's fiancé, planning a wedding and a future built on faith and commitment. "Are you sure?" Natalie asked. "Maybe she broke up with the guy from home?" "I'm sure," I said quietly. "They're supposed to get married next summer." Natalie whistled low. "Damn, that's cold, even for college." That afternoon, I did something I'd never done before. I called Tyler directly. "Rachel," he said, sounding genuinely happy to hear from me. "How's college treating you?" "It's good," I said. "Tyler, can I ask you something?" "Of course." "When was the last time you actually talked to Ashley? Like, really talked to her?" There was a pause. "What do you mean?" "I mean, when was the last time you had a real conversation? Not just texting or leaving voicemails, but actually talking." Tyler was quiet for so long that I wondered if the call had dropped. "It's been a while," he finally admitted. "Maybe 3 weeks? She's been so busy with school, and I've been swamped with senior year and seminary applications." "But that's normal, right? College is demanding." 3 weeks. Ashley had been avoiding Tyler's calls for 3 weeks while carrying on an intense relationship with Marcus Rivera. "Tyler," I said gently, "I think you should come visit her. Soon." "I've suggested that, but she always says she's too busy. Big projects, exams, you know how it is." I think you should surprise her, I said. This weekend. Don't tell her you're coming. I could hear the uncertainty in Tyler's voice when he responded. Do you think something's wrong? Is Ashley okay? No, I thought. Ashley is definitely not okay, but I couldn't bring myself to destroy Tyler's life over the phone. I just think she misses you more than she's letting on, I said instead. Sometimes surprises can remind people what's important. Tyler agreed to think about it, and I hung up, feeling like I'd set something in motion that couldn't be stopped. Part of me felt guilty for interfering, but a bigger part of me felt like someone needed to force the truth into the open before Ashley's deception went any further. That week, I watched Ashley more carefully than ever, looking for signs of the guilt or stress that should have been eating her alive. But she seemed happier than I'd seen her in years, practically glowing with the kind of contentment that comes from being thoroughly adored by someone who thinks you're perfect. It made me sick. Friday afternoon, I got the call I'd been expecting and dreading. Rachel. Tyler's voice was tight with controlled emotion. I need to ask you something, and I need you to be honest with me. My heart started pounding. Okay. Is Ashley seeing someone else? The question hung between us like a loaded weapon. I could lie, protect Ashley's secret, and hope that somehow everything would work out. Or I could tell the truth and watch her carefully constructed world explode. Tyler, I said slowly, I think you should ask Ashley that question. I tried to, he said, and now I could hear the pain beneath his controlled tone. I drove up yesterday to surprise her, just like you suggested. I wanted to take her out to dinner, maybe talk about our future, try to reconnect. I closed, my eyes knowing what was coming. She wasn't in her dorm, Tyler continued. Her roommate said she was at a party, so I went looking for her. Tyler? I found her, Rachel. I found her with him. The devastation in his voice made my chest ache. Tyler was a good person, someone who genuinely loved Ashley and planned to build a life with her based on shared faith and values. He didn't deserve this. I'm so sorry, I whispered. She tried to explain, Tyler said. She said it wasn't what it looked like, that he was just a friend. But Rachel, I saw them together. I saw the way they looked at each other. That's not friendship. I didn't know what to say. What comfort could I offer someone whose entire future had just been ripped away? What are you going to do? I asked. I don't know, Tyler said honestly. Part of me wants to fight for her, to try to understand what went wrong and fix it. But another part of me wonders if I ever really knew her at all. That question haunted me too. Had I ever really known Ashley? Or had she always been capable of this kind of deception, this kind of cruelty? She wants to talk, Tyler continued. She's driving home this weekend to explain everything. But I don't know if there's anything she could say that would make this okay. After Tyler hung up, I sat in my empty dorm room and tried to process everything that had happened. In a matter of months, I discovered that both Connor and Ashley, two people I'd trusted completely, were capable of betraying the values they claimed to share with me. But Ashley's betrayal felt worse somehow. Connor had hurt me, but Ashley was destroying Tyler, a man who'd loved her faithfully for years and who'd based his entire future on the assumption that she felt the same way about him. When Ashley called me that evening, her voice was strained and desperate. Rachel, I need to talk to you, she said. Tyler told me about your conversation. What conversation? I asked, though I knew exactly what she meant. Don't play dumb, Ashley snapped, and for the first time I heard anger in her voice directed at me. You encouraged him to come up here. You knew what he'd find. I knew you were lying to him, I said quietly. I knew you were cheating on him. There was a long pause. How long have you known? Ashley asked finally. Long enough, I said. Long enough to feel sick every time someone talks about your wedding plans. long enough to feel guilty every time Tyler calls looking for you. You don't understand the situation, Ashley said. You don't understand what my life has been like. Then explain it to me, I challenged. Explain how being unhappy justifies what you've been doing. I never meant for this to happen, Ashley said. And now she sounded like she was crying. I love Tyler, I do. But Marcus makes me feel alive in a way I'd forgotten was possible. He sees me as more than just a future pastor's wife. He thinks I'm interesting and smart and capable of more than just supporting someone else's dreams. I could hear the genuine pain in her voice, and despite everything, I felt a stab of sympathy for her. If that's how you feel, I said gently, then break up with Tyler. Be honest with him and with yourself about what you want. It's not that simple, Ashley said. Do you have any idea what this would do to our family? To Tyler's family? To the church? Everyone's been planning our wedding for years. Dad's already put down deposits. Tyler's father has been talking about us taking over the youth ministry together. So you're going to marry him anyway? I asked, incredulous. You're going to stand up in front of God and everyone and promise to love, honor, and be faithful to him when you're in love with someone else? I don't know, Ashley whispered. I don't know what I'm going to do. That weekend, Ashley went home to Millbrook to face the consequences of Tyler's discovery. I stayed on campus, unable to concentrate on my studies, unable to think about anything except the chaos that was about to engulf my family. Sunday evening, Ashley called me from her car, driving back to campus. How did it go? I asked. It's over, she said simply. Tyler broke up with me. Despite everything, I felt a pang of sadness for her. Whatever her mistakes, Ashley was still my sister, and I could hear the genuine heartbreak in her voice. I'm sorry, I said, and I meant it. Are you? Ashley asked, and there was a sharp edge to her voice that I'd never heard before. Because it seems like you were pretty eager to see my relationship destroyed. That's not fair, I said. I never wanted to see you hurt, but I also couldn't watch you keep hurting Tyler. Tyler will be fine, Ashley said dismissively. He's the perfect pastor's son. He'll find another perfect pastor's wife and forget I ever existed. The callousness in her tone shocked me. This wasn't grief or regret I was hearing. It was resentment. What about you? I asked. What happens now? Now I get to deal with the fallout, Ashley said bitterly. Dad's furious, Mom's heartbroken, the whole church is talking about it, and everyone's treating me like I'm some kind of monster. Ashley? But you know what, Rachel? I'm not sorry. For the first time in my life, I did something for myself instead of living up to everyone else's expectations, and it felt good. The conversation ended there, and I hung up feeling like I'd just talked to a stranger. The Ashley I'd known my entire life would never have spoken so coldly about Tyler's pain, would never have dismissed the hurt she'd caused so casually. Over the next few weeks, the full scope of the drama back home became clear. Tyler had told his parents everything, and Pastor Hayes had felt obligated to share the situation with the church leadership. The news had spread through Millbrook like wildfire, and the Carter family was at the center of a scandal that would be talked about for years. Ashley seemed to thrive on the notoriety. Instead of showing remorse or seeking forgiveness, she doubled down on her relationship with Marcus, flaunting it around campus in a way that seemed designed to prove she had no regrets about her choices. But the final blow came when I discovered just how long Ashley's deception had been going on and how deep it really went. The truth was worse than anything I'd imagined, and when I learned it, I realized that Ashley hadn't just betrayed Tyler or our family's trust. She had betrayed everything we'd been raised to believe was sacred, and she had done it with a calculated cruelty that would change forever how I saw my sister and myself. The revelation that would change everything came through Natalie, ironically enough. It was a cold February morning, about 4 months after Tyler and Ashley's breakup, and I was hunched over my laptop in the library trying to finish a paper on Victorian religious poetry when Natalie slid into the chair across from me, with an expression I'd never seen before. "Rachel," she said quietly, glancing around to make sure we weren't overheard. "I need to tell you something about your sister, and you're not going to want to hear it." My stomach dropped. I'd thought the worst of Ashley's secrets had already been exposed, but something in Natalie's tone suggested otherwise. "What is it?" I asked, closing my laptop. Natalie pulled out her phone and opened what appeared to be a social media app I wasn't familiar with. The screen showed a grid of photos, and she scrolled to one that made my blood run cold. It was Ashley, but not the Ashley from her carefully curated Instagram or Facebook pages. This Ashley was disheveled, her hair messy, wearing what appeared to be a man's t-shirt and nothing else. She was curled up against someone whose face was partially visible in the frame, and the timestamp showed it was from 18 months ago. 18 months ago. That meant this photo had been taken during Ashley's sophomore year, when she was still very much with Tyler, when she was still the golden girl of Millbrook Community Church. "Where did you get this?" I whispered. "There's this private group chat," Natalie explained, her voice barely audible. "Some of the guys on campus use it to share photos of hookups. I only found out about it because my friend Jessica's boyfriend showed her something and she recognized your sister." My hands were shaking as I took the phone to look more closely. The face next to Ashley wasn't Marcus Rivera. This was someone else entirely, a guy with blonde hair and distinctive tattoos on his arms. "Who is that?" I asked. "David Thompson," Natalie said. "He graduated last year, but he was pretty well known around campus. Football player, business major. Definitely not the kind of guy your sister should have been hanging around with if she was supposed to be this pure Christian girl." I scrolled through more photos, each one worse than the last. Ashley with David in what appeared to be his dorm room. Ashley at parties, drinking and dancing in ways that would have scandalized everyone back home. Ashley in compromising positions that left no doubt about what she'd been doing. The timestamps told a story that made me physically sick. These photos spanned almost 2 years, starting from Ashley's freshman year and continuing well into her sophomore year. She hadn't just cheated on Tyler with Marcus Rivera. She'd been living a double life for most of her college career, carrying on relationships with multiple men while maintaining her facade as the perfect pastor's fiancé. "There are more," Natalie said gently. "Rachel, I'm so sorry, but there are a lot more." She showed me photo after photo, messages between Ashley and various men, screenshots of conversations that revealed a side of my sister I'd never imagined existed. She was crude, manipulative, calculating in ways that showed this wasn't just youthful experimentation or rebellion. This was deliberate deception carried out over years. One conversation in particular stood out. It was between Ashley and David. Thompson, dated about 8 months earlier, just before her engagement to Tyler had been officially announced in the church bulletin. Ashley: "God, I can't wait to get out of this ridiculous town and away from these people who think they know me." David: "What about your boyfriend? The pastor's kid?" Ashley: "Tyler, please, he's just my insurance policy. Marry the pastor's son? Be the perfect little wife and I'll never have to worry about money or status in that pathetic town. But that doesn't mean I can't have fun while I'm here." David: "You're cold, Carter. I like it." Ashley: "I learned a long time ago that nice girls finish last. My little sister can have the purity ring and all the moral superiority that comes with it. I'll take the real world." Reading those words felt like being stabbed in the chest. Ashley hadn't just been cheating on Tyler. She'd been planning to use him, to build her entire future on a foundation of lies while openly mocking the values that shaped our family and our community. And she'd specifically mentioned me, dismissing my faith and my commitment as naive while she pursued a life of deliberate deception. "When were these messages sent?" I asked, though I was almost afraid to hear the answer. "Look at the date," stamp, Natalie said softly. I looked. The conversation had taken place just 2 weeks after Ashley had comforted me through Connor's betrayal, just days after she'd sat on my bed and talked about keeping one's heart pure, about not letting other people's failures corrupt who I was. While she was counseling me about the importance of genuine commitment and the value of waiting for real love, she was actively planning to deceive Tyler and everyone else who trusted her. There's something else, Natalie said reluctantly. Something worse. I didn't think anything could be worse than what I'd already seen, but Natalie's expression told me I was wrong. She scrolled to a different conversation, this one more recent. The participants were Ashley and Marcus Rivera, but they weren't discussing their relationship. They were talking about me. Marcus, your sister seems sweet, very different from you. Ashley, Rachel's a child. She actually believes all that purity ring nonsense our grandmother filled her head with. It's almost sad, really. Marcus, she's not that much younger than you. Ashley, age has nothing to do with it. Rachel still thinks the world works, the way our parents pretend it does. She thinks good behavior gets rewarded and that people are basically honest. It's pathetic. Marcus, maybe she just has different values. Ashley, she has our grandmother's values, which died with the old lady, but Rachel doesn't know that yet. She'll figure it out eventually, and when she does, she'll realize I was right all along. Marcus, right about what? Ashley, that the whole purity thing is just a way to control women. Keep them naive and dependent so they'll settle for whatever scraps of affection they can get. I'm never going to be that girl. The conversation continued, but I couldn't read any more. Ashley hadn't just been living a lie. She'd been actively mocking everything I believed in, everything our grandmother had taught us, everything that had given my life meaning and structure. And she'd been doing it while positioning herself as my protector and guide. I'm sorry, Natalie said quietly. I know this is horrible to see, but I thought you should know what kind of person she really is. I handed the phone back to her with trembling hands. How many people have seen these? The group chat has maybe 20 guys in it, Natalie said, but the photos and messages have been circulating for months. Rachel, I hate to tell you this, but your sister has a reputation on campus. Everyone knows she's not what she pretends to be. That afternoon, I walked around campus in a daze, trying to process what I'd learned. Everything I thought I knew, about Ashley, about our relationship, about her role in my life, had been a lie. She hadn't been the supportive older sister helping me through heartbreak. She'd been the predator who'd created that heartbreak in the first place. Because suddenly, Connor's betrayal made perfect sense. I called Connor that evening, something I hadn't done since our breakup almost 2 years earlier. He answered on the third ring, his voice cautious but not unfriendly. Rachel? Is everything okay? Connor? I need to ask you something, and I need you to be completely honest with me. There was a pause. Okay? The girl you were seeing at Tennessee State. Jessica. How did you meet her? Another pause, longer this time. Rachel, why are you asking about this now? I thought we'd moved past all that. Please, I said, just answer the question. Connor sighed. I met her at a party. Someone introduced us. Who introduced you? Silence. Connor, who introduced you to Jessica? Your sister, he said finally. Ashley introduced us. The world tilted sideways. What? Ashley brought me to a party at Tennessee State, Connor said, his words coming faster now as if he'd been waiting to confess this for years. She said she wanted to show me what college life was really like, that you were too sheltered and I needed to experience more before I committed to such a serious relationship. I felt like I was going to be sick. She kept buying me drinks, Connor continued. And she kept talking about how young we were, how we shouldn't tie ourselves down so early. When Jessica started flirting with me, Ashley encouraged it. She said you'd never know, that what happened at college stayed at college. And you believed her? I was 18, Rachel. I was stupid and drunk and flattered that an older girl was paying attention to me. Ashley made it sound like what I was doing was normal, like everyone our age was experimenting. She said you'd do the same thing if you had the opportunity. I closed my eyes, trying to absorb the full scope of Ashley's manipulation. She hadn't just failed to protect my relationship, she'd actively sabotaged it. She'd deliberately introduced Connor to temptation and then encouraged him to betray me. Why didn't you ever tell me this? I asked. Because I was ashamed, Connor said quietly. And because I knew it would hurt you even more to know that your own sister had set it up. Ashley made me promise never to tell you about her involvement. Did you ever sleep with Jessica? Yes, Connor admitted, multiple times. Ashley said that's what college relationships were for, that it didn't mean anything as long as I still cared about you. I was crying now, not for Connor or our lost relationship, but for the naive girl I'd been who'd trusted her sister completely. Rachel, Connor said gently, I know this doesn't change anything, but I want you to know that I regretted it almost. Immediately. What Ashley said made sense when I was drunk and stupid, but the next morning I realized what I'd done to you, to us. I tried to break it off with Jessica, but by then the damage was done. After hanging up with Connor, I sat in my dorm room and tried to piece together the full picture of Ashley's deception. She hadn't just been cheating on Tyler or living a double life at college. She'd been actively working to corrupt other people to drag them down to her level of dishonesty and betrayal. She'd destroyed my relationship with Connor not out of malice, necessarily, but out of a cynical belief that everyone was ultimately selfish and dishonest. She couldn't stand the idea that I might actually live according to the values we'd been raised with. So she'd set out to prove that those values were meaningless. And when Connor's betrayal had devastated me, she'd comforted me while secretly knowing that she was responsible for my pain. The next few days passed in a blur of anger, grief, and growing determination. I went through the motions of attending classes and completing assignments, but my mind was consumed with questions about what to do with the information I'd discovered. Part of me wanted to confront Ashley directly, to force her to acknowledge what she'd done and apologize for the weight or pain she'd caused, but another part of me knew that Ashley was incapable of genuine remorse. Her messages with Marcus had made it clear that she viewed her deception as a sign of sophistication rather than a moral failing. The deciding factor came when I learned that Ashley was planning to transfer to a different university for her senior year. Not because she felt any shame about her behavior, but because she'd grown tired of Tennessee State and wanted a fresh start somewhere more exciting. I'm thinking about UCLA or maybe NYU, she told me during one of our weekly phone calls, her voice bright with excitement. Somewhere cosmopolitan where people understand that life is about more than following outdated rules. What about Marcus? I asked. Marcus was fun, but he's not going anywhere after graduation. He'll probably end up managing his family's restaurant or something equally provincial. I need someone with bigger ambitions. The casual way she dismissed Marcus, after destroying her engagement for him, after building an entire relationship, on their supposed connection, revealed the true depth of Ashley's selfishness. She didn't just lie to others, she lied to herself about what she wanted and what mattered to her. Have you talked to Tyler lately? I asked. Ashley's tone cooled. Tyler's moved on. He's dating some girl from his seminary. Good for him. Do you feel bad about what happened between you two? Feel bad? Ashley laughed. Rachel, Tyler, and I were never right for each other. We were just playing the roles everyone expected us to play. Breaking up was the best thing that could have happened to both of us. Even though you cheated on him for 2 years? There was a long pause. I never cheated on Tyler, Ashley said carefully. We had an understanding that we were both free to explore other relationships while we were apart. This was a lie. so blatant that it took my breath away. Tyler had made it clear that he believed they were exclusively committed to each other. Their engagement had been built on the assumption of faithfulness and shared values. "Ashley," I said quietly, "that's not true, and you know it." "I know what my relationship with Tyler was," Ashley said, her voice taking on an edge. "And I don't appreciate being lectured by someone who's never had a serious relationship." The conversation ended shortly after that, and I hung up feeling like I'd been talking to a stranger. This wasn't the sister I'd grown up with, the woman I'd looked up to and trusted. This was someone I didn't recognize, someone capable of lies and manipulation that went far beyond typical sibling rivalry or even garden variety selfishness. Over the next few weeks, I found myself thinking constantly about our grandmother and the purity ring she'd left to me. Margaret Carter had been a woman of deep faith and strong convictions, someone who'd lived through the Depression and World War II without losing her belief in the importance of character and commitment. When she chose to leave her ring to me, instead of Ashley, she'd written that she'd seen my quiet faithfulness and genuine heart. At the time, I'd been puzzled by her decision to pass over Ashley, who was so much more obviously committed to the church and its teachings. Now I wondered if Grandma Margaret had seen something in Ashley that the rest of us had missed. Had she recognized the performative nature of Ashley's faith? Had she sensed that Ashley's commitment was more about appearances than genuine conviction? The more I thought about it, the more I realized that Grandma Margaret's decision hadn't been about comparing Ashley and me. It had been about recognizing authenticity versus performance, substance versus style. Ashley had always been better at playing the part of the perfect Christian daughter. She knew what to say and how to act to earn praise and approval. But Grandma Margaret had been looking deeper, trying to identify which granddaughter would truly honor the values the ring represented. That realization gave me the clarity I needed to decide what to do with the information I'd discovered about Ashley's double life. I wasn't going to confront her directly. I wasn't going to try to shame her into changing or force her to acknowledge her wrongdoing. Ashley had made her choices, and she would have to live with the consequences. But I also wasn't going to stay silent while she continued to hurt other people or mock the values that still meant something to me. The opportunity to act came in March, just before spring break. Ashley called to tell me she'd been accepted to NYU for her senior year and would be transferring at the end of the semester. "I'm having a going-away party," she said excitedly. "Nothing too crazy, just some friends from campus. You should come." "I don't know," I said. "Parties aren't really my thing." "Come on, Rachel. It'll be fun. And it's time you started expanding your social circle beyond your roommate and your kid books." The condescension in her tone made my decision for me. "Okay," I said. "I'll be there." Ashley's going-away party was held at an off-campus house that belonged to one of Marcus's friends. When I arrived, the place was already crowded with people I recognized from around campus but had never spoken to. The music was loud, the drinks were flowing freely, and Ashley was in her element, moving through the crowd like a celebrity accepting congratulations on her escape from provincial Tennessee. I spent the first hour observing, watching Ashley work the room with the same charm she'd always used to win over adults back home. She was magnetic, drawing people into her orbit with ease, but I could see now that there was something calculated about her interactions. Every conversation served a purpose. Every smile was designed to achieve a specific goal. Around 10 o'clock, when the party was at its peak, I made my move. I found Ashley in the kitchen, refreshing her drink and laughing, with a group of people I didn't recognize. When she saw me, her face lit up with what appeared to be genuine pleasure. "Rachel!" she exclaimed, pulling me into a hug. "I'm so glad you came. Are you having fun?" "Actually," I said loudly enough for the people around us to hear, "I wanted to ask you about something." "Sure. What's up?" I pulled out my phone and opened the photos that Natalie had shown me. "I wanted to ask about these pictures." Ashley's smile faltered as she recognized what I was showing her. "The people around, Us had gone quiet, sensing drama. "Where did you get those?" Ashley asked, her voice tight. "They've been circulating around campus for months," I said clearly, along with some very interesting text messages. I swiped to the conversation where Ashley had called me pathetic and dismissed our grandmother's values as outdated. "I especially enjoyed the part where you talked about how naive I am for believing in commitment and honesty," I continued, my voice carrying across the suddenly quiet kitchen. Ashley's face had gone pale. "Rachel, you don't understand the context." "Oh, I understand perfectly," I said. "I understand that you've been living a lie for years. I understand that you destroyed my relationship with Connor by deliberately introducing him to someone else. I understand that you cheated on Tyler for 2 years while planning to marry him." The kitchen had gone completely silent now, and I could see people pulling out their phones to record what was happening. "Most of all," I said, looking directly into Ashley's eyes, "I understand that you stole my purity ring to mock me, so I'm here to steal yours." Ashley looked confused. "What are you talking about? I never stole your ring." "Not the physical ring," I said. "You stole what it represented. You took my innocence, my trust, my belief that the people I loved were worth believing in. You stole my purity of heart." I held up my phone so everyone could see the screen clearly. "So now I'm stealing yours," I continued. "I'm showing everyone who you really are behind all the performance and pretense. I'm exposing the truth about your affairs, your lies, your manipulation. I'm taking away the purity of reputation you've worked so hard to maintain." Ashley lunged for my phone, but I stepped back quickly. "It's too late," I said. "I've already sent copies to everyone who needs to see them. Tyler, your parents, Pastor Hayes, the admissions office at NYU. Ashley's face went white. "You didn't." "I did," I said calmly. "You want to talk about living in the real world? Welcome to it. In the real world, actions have consequences." The crowd around us had erupted into excited whispers. Phones appeared everywhere as people began sharing what they'd witnessed. Ashley stood frozen in the center of it all, finally experiencing the exposure and judgment she'd so long avoided. "You're destroying my life," she whispered. "No," I said quietly, so only she could hear. "I'm just making sure everyone knows what you've already done to yourself." I walked out of that party feeling lighter than I had in months, knowing that Ashley's carefully constructed facade was finally crumbling, and that the truth about her character was being revealed to everyone who mattered. The aftermath of that party spread through campus faster than wildfire. By Monday morning, everyone at Tennessee State knew about Ashley Carter's public humiliation. The photos and messages I'd shared had been screenshot, reposted, and disseminated across every social media platform until Ashley's double life was no longer a secret whispered about in private group chats, but front-page campus gossip. I watched it all unfold from a distance, observing the destruction of Ashley's carefully crafted reputation with a mixture of satisfaction and regret. Part of me felt vindicated seeing the truth finally exposed, but another part mourned the loss of the sister I'd thought I knew, even if that sister had never really existed. The first call came from my parents on Tuesday morning. I was in my American literature class when my phone started buzzing insistently. Professor Williams frowned in my direction, and I quickly silenced it, but the calls kept coming. By the time class ended, I had 17 missed calls and twice as many text messages. I found a quiet corner of the library before calling home, bracing myself for what I knew would be a difficult conversation. Rachel Elizabeth Carter. My mother's voice was ice cold, using my full name in the way that had terrified me as a child. "What in God's name have you done?" I took a deep breath. "I told the truth, Mom. You humiliated your sister in front of half the college and sent disgusting photos to our pastor. How is that telling the truth?" "The photos weren't disgusting because I sent them, Mom. They were disgusting because Ashley took them. made sure the right people saw what she was really doing. There was a long pause, and I could hear my father's voice in the background, though I couldn't make out his words. "Your father wants to speak with you," Mom said finally. Dad's voice was heavy with disappointment when he came on the line. "Rachel, honey, I don't understand what's gotten into you. This isn't like you." "Maybe it's exactly like me," I said quietly. "Maybe I'm finally standing up for what I believe in instead of just pretending everything is fine when it's not. But to air the family's dirty laundry in public like this? To cause such a scandal? People are calling the house constantly. Pastor Hayes wants to meet with the whole family. Your sister is devastated." "Ashley should be devastated," I said, my voice growing stronger. "She's been lying to all of us for years. She destroyed Tyler. She manipulated Connor. And she's been making a mockery of everything you raised us to believe in." "Whatever Ashley may have done," Dad said carefully, "that doesn't justify what you've done. We don't handle family problems by humiliating each other in public." "We don't handle them at all," I shot back. "We just pretend they don't exist and hope they go away." "Well, this one wasn't going away, Dad. Ashley was going to keep hurting people until someone stopped her." The conversation continued for another painful 10 minutes before my parents hung up, making it clear that I was to come home immediately to face the family meeting Pastor Hayes had called. I refused, telling them that I was an adult who could make her own decisions about when and how to address family issues. That evening, Ashley showed up at my dorm. I was studying for a midterm exam when Natalie burst through the door, her eyes wide with excitement and concern. "Your sister's in the lobby," she announced, "and she looks like she's ready to commit murder." I closed my textbook and tried to calm my racing heart. I'd known this confrontation was coming, but I hadn't expected it so soon. "Should I call security?" Natalie asked, only half joking. "No," I said, standing up and smoothing my clothes. "This is between Ashley and me." The elevator ride down to the lobby felt endless, giving me too much time to think about what I was going to say. When the doors opened, I saw Ashley immediately. She was pacing near the entrance, her hair disheveled and her usually perfect makeup smudged. She looked like she hadn't slept in days. When she saw me, her face twisted with an anger I'd never seen before. "You vindictive little bitch," she hissed, not caring who heard her. "Do you have any idea what you've done?" "I know exactly what I've done," I said calmly, leading her toward a quieter corner of the lobby. "I've told the truth." "You've ruined my life." Ashley's voice cracked, and I could see she was on the verge of tears. "NYU rescinded their acceptance. The photos are everywhere online. Mom and Dad can barely show their faces in town. Tyler's father called Dad and told him our family isn't welcome at the church anymore." Despite everything, seeing Ashley's genuine distress tugged at my heart. This was still my sister, the person who'd taught me to ride a bike and helped me with my math homework and braided my hair before church on Sundays. "Ashley," I said gently, "I'm sorry you're hurting, but none of this would have happened if you hadn't made the choices you made." "I'm 20 years old," Ashley screamed, drawing stares from everyone in the lobby. "I'm supposed to be figuring out who I am and what I want. I'm not supposed to live my entire life according to some ancient rule book that doesn't make sense." "Anymore." "You're right," I said, surprising her. "You should figure out who you are and what you want, but you should do it honestly, not by lying to everyone who loves you." Ashley laughed bitterly. "Honestly? You want to talk about honesty? You've been plotting against me for months, pretending to be my supportive little sister while collecting evidence to destroy me. How is that honest?" The accusation stung because there was some truth to it. I had been gathering information about Ashley's behavior, and I had been planning how to use it against her. "You're right," I admitted. "I should have confronted you directly instead of waiting to expose you publicly. But Ashley, what you were doing was wrong. You were going to marry Tyler knowing you'd been cheating on him for years. You were going to build your entire life on a lie." "So what?" Ashley demanded. So what if I was going to marry Tyler? Lots of people get married for practical reasons. Lots of people have complicated relationships. At least I would have been a good wife to him. How can you say that? I stared at her in disbelief. You just told me you were planning to keep lying to him forever. How is that being a good wife? Ashley's expression hardened. You know what your problem is, Rachel? You think the world is some fairy tale where good behavior gets rewarded and everyone lives happily ever after. But that's not how life works. People like Tyler and people like our parents, they live in this bubble where they can afford to have principles because they've never faced real challenges. What challenges have you faced that I haven't? I asked. Try being the perfect daughter for 18 years, Ashley snapped. Try having everyone expect you to be the example for the entire youth group. Try having your every move watched and judged by people who are just waiting for you to slip up so they can feel better about their own failures. I could hear the genuine pain beneath her anger, and it made me realize something I'd never understood before. Ashley hadn't been living a double life because she was inherently evil or selfish. She'd been living it because she felt trapped by the expectations placed on her, suffocated by the role she'd been assigned from birth. But Ashley, I said softly, nobody forced you to be the perfect daughter. You chose that. You could have been honest about what you wanted instead of pretending to be something you weren't. Could I? Ashley's voice was bitter. Could I really? What do you think would have happened if I'd told Mom and Dad that I didn't want to marry Tyler? That I wanted to date around in college like a normal person? That maybe I wasn't sure I believed everything they taught us about relationships and sex and marriage? I thought about it honestly. Our parents were loving but conservative, and the community we'd grown up in wasn't known for its tolerance of deviation from traditional values. They would have been disappointed, I admitted. But they would have gotten over it. They love you, Ashley. They would have supported you eventually. Ashley shook her head. You're so naive, Rachel. You think love is enough to overcome everything, but it's not. Do you know what it's like to disappoint people who've invested everything in your success? Do you know what it's like to be the daughter who destroys the family's reputation? I know what it's like now, I said pointedly. Because that's exactly what I've done by exposing you. Ashley stared at me for a long moment, and I could see her processing the truth of what I'd said. The difference is, I continued, I made my choice knowing what the consequences would be. I decided that telling the truth was more important than protecting our family's reputation or keeping everyone comfortable. And what gives you the right to make that choice for all of us? Ashley demanded. The same thing that gave you the right to lie for all of us, I shot back. We're all responsible for our own actions, Ashley. You don't get to live however you want and then demand that everyone else protect you from the consequences. We stood, there staring at each other, two sisters who'd grown up in the same house but had apparently learned completely different lessons about integrity and responsibility. I hate you, Ashley said finally, but her voice lacked conviction. No, you don't, I replied. You hate that you got caught. You hate that you can't keep living the lie. But you don't hate me. Ashley's composure finally cracked, and she started crying in earnest. Despite everything she'd done, despite all the pain she'd caused, seeing her breakdown made my heart ache. I don't know what to do now, she whispered. NYU won't take me. I can't go home. Everyone on campus is talking about me. I don't have anywhere to go. For a moment, I considered offering to help her figure something out, to be the supportive sister I'd always tried to be. But then I remembered Tyler's devastated voice on the phone, remembered Connor's confession about Ashley's manipulation, remembered all the cruel things she'd said about me and our family. You'll figure it out, I said instead. You're smart and resourceful, and you're good at getting people to like you. You just have to decide if you want to use those skills to build something real or to create another elaborate lie. Ashley wiped her eyes and tried to pull herself together. If I do find a way forward, it won't include you. After what you've done, we're not sisters anymore. The words hurt more than I'd expected them to, but I kept my expression steady. If that's what you want, I said. But Ashley, if you ever decide you want to be honest about who you are and what you want, if you ever want to have a real relationship instead of one built on deception, I'll be here. Ashley turned and walked away without another word, and I watched her go, knowing that our relationship might never recover from what had happened between us. The next few weeks were among the most difficult of my life. The story of the Carter sisters had spread far beyond our campus, picked up by local news outlets and eventually making its way to social media platforms where it was dissected and debated by strangers who turned our family drama into entertainment. I received hundreds of messages from people I'd never met, some supporting my decision to expose Ashley's lies, and others condemning me for destroying my sister's life. The attention was overwhelming and unwanted, making me question whether my desire for truth had been worth the circus that followed. My grades suffered as I struggled to concentrate on my studies while dealing with the constant scrutiny. Professors who'd never noticed me before suddenly knew exactly who I was, and I could feel their eyes on me during lectures, wondering if I was the vindictive sister or the righteous truth-teller. The worst part was the isolation. Ashley and I had shared the same circle of friends back home, and most of them sided with her, viewing me as the jealous younger sister who'd destroyed her sibling out of spite. Even some people at college began to avoid me, apparently deciding that anyone capable of such a public takedown couldn't be trusted with their own secrets. Only Natalie stood by me unwaveringly, listening to my doubts and regrets without judgment, and reminding me that sometimes doing the right thing came with a price that felt unbearable. You saved Tyler from marrying someone who would have made him miserable, she pointed out one evening as we sat in our room, studying for finals. You saved your parents from watching their daughter build her life on a foundation of lies. You even saved Ashley from having to live that lie forever. Then why do I feel so terrible? I asked. Because you love her, Natalie said simply. Because she's your sister, and you never wanted to hurt her, even when she was hurting other people. 3 weeks after the confrontation in the lobby, I received an unexpected visitor. Tyler Hayes knocked on my dorm room door on a Thursday evening, looking older and more serious than the boy I'd known in high school. Tyler, I said, surprised to see him. What are you doing here? I wanted to thank you, he said simply, and I wanted to apologize. I invited him in, and we sat on my desk chairs facing each other while Natalie discreetly put on headphones and pretended to study. Thank you for what? I asked. For telling me the truth, Tyler said. For making sure I found out about Ashley before I married her. I know it couldn't have been easy to betray your own sister. I didn't betray her, I said, though I wasn't entirely sure I believed it. I just stopped protecting her from the consequences of her own choices. Tyler nodded thoughtfully. I've been thinking about that a lot lately, about the difference between loyalty and enabling, about whether keeping someone's secrets is always the right thing to do. What did you decide? That you did the right thing, Tyler said firmly. Even though it was hard, even though it hurt people, even though it caused a scandal, you did the right thing. I felt some of the weight I'd been carrying lift from my shoulders. Tyler's forgiveness and understanding meant more to me than I could express. What did you want to apologize for? I asked. Tyler looked down at his hands. For not seeing who Ashley really was. For being so focused on the image she projected that I ignored the signs that something was wrong. If I'd been paying better attention, if I'd asked harder questions, maybe none of this would have happened. Tyler, you can't blame yourself for trusting someone you loved. Ashley was very good at being what people wanted her to be. Maybe, Tyler said. But I think part of me didn't want to see the truth. Because it was easier to believe in the fantasy. It was easier to think I was getting the perfect wife than to deal with the reality of who she actually was. We talked for another hour about forgiveness and truth, and the complicated nature of love. When Tyler left, he hugged me goodbye and told me he was proud of me for having the courage to do what was right, even when it was difficult. That conversation helped me realize that I'd been so focused on whether I'd made the right choice that I'd lost sight of why I'd made it in the first place. I hadn't exposed Ashley to hurt her or to get revenge. I'd done it to protect Tyler and to uphold the values that mattered to me. Standing up for truth and integrity sometimes required difficult choices, and while I regretted the pain those choices had caused, I didn't regret making them. The semester ended with my grades lower than they'd ever been, but my sense of self stronger than it had been since Connor's betrayal. I'd learned that doing the right thing didn't always feel good, that sometimes protecting others required hurting someone you loved, and that the purity ring my grandmother had left me represented more than just physical chastity. It represented the commitment to live according to your principles, even when those principles demanded sacrifice. It represented the courage to tell hard truths and face difficult consequences. Most of all, it represented the understanding that real purity came from authenticity, from being honest about who you were and what you believed, even when that honesty was costly. As I packed my belongings to go home for the summer, I knew I was returning to Millbrook as a different person than the one who'd left. The naive girl who'd trusted blindly and assumed the best about everyone was gone, replaced by someone who'd learned to see clearly and act decisively. I didn't know what kind of reception would be waiting for me at home, or whether Ashley and I would ever be able to repair our relationship. But I knew that whatever happened, I'd face it as someone who'd chosen truth over comfort, integrity, over peace, and authenticity over pretense. The purity ring on my finger caught the light as I closed my suitcase, and I thought about my grandmother Margaret and the wisdom she'd shown in choosing which granddaughter could truly honor what it represented. She'd seen something in me that I'd needed to discover for myself, the strength to stand alone when necessary, the courage to speak truth when it was unwelcome, and the commitment to live according to principles that went deeper than appearances. As I prepared to face whatever came next, I carried that ring and everything it represented with pride, knowing that I'd finally proven myself worthy of the trust my grandmother had placed in me. Returning to Millbrook that summer felt like entering a war zone where the battle lines had already been drawn, and I was clearly on the losing side. The moment I stepped off the Greyhound bus at the small station downtown, I could see the stares and whispered conversations that followed me. Word of what had happened at Tennessee State had preceded me home, growing and mutating in the telling until I wasn't sure what version of events people believed anymore. Mrs. Henderson from the grocery store crossed the street to avoid walking past me. The pharmacy clerk who'd known me since childhood suddenly found paperwork that required her urgent attention when I approached the counter. Even the mailman seemed uncomfortable making eye contact when he handed me letters addressed to my parents. The house on Maple Street looked exactly the same from the outside, but the atmosphere inside had changed completely. Mom moved through the rooms like a ghost, her usual cheerful chatter replaced by heavy silence. Dad buried himself in work and church responsibilities, avoiding direct conversation about anything more substantial than the weather or my college grades. Ashley hadn't come home at all. According to Mom, she'd found somewhere to stay for the summer, though she wouldn't say where. The wedding dress that had hung in Ashley's closet since Christmas was gone, along with most of her personal belongings. It was as if she'd erased herself from our family, rather than face the consequences of her exposure. The first week home was torture. I helped Mom with household chores and accompanied Dad to his hardware store, but conversations felt stilted and artificial. Everyone was clearly waiting for someone else to address the elephant in the room, and no one seemed willing to take the first step. The breaking point came on a Wednesday evening when Pastor Hayes called the house and asked to speak with me personally. Dad handed me the phone with a grim expression that told me this wasn't going to be a pleasant conversation. "Rachel," Pastor Hayes said, his voice carrying the weight of paternal disappointment. I think it's time you and I had a talk. Can you come by the church tomorrow morning? I agreed, though my stomach churned with anxiety about what that conversation would entail. Millbrook Community Church looked different in the harsh morning light than it had during the golden hour, services of my childhood. The stained glass windows that had once seemed magical now appeared judgmental, casting colored shadows that felt more ominous than beautiful. Pastor Hayes was waiting for me in his office, sitting behind the same desk, where he'd counseled countless members of our community through various crises. Sit down, Rachel, he said, gesturing to the chair across from him. We need to discuss what happened at college and how it's affected our church family. I sat carefully, smoothing my skirt and folding my hands in my lap the way I'd been taught to do when meeting with authority figures. Pastor Hayes, I began, but he held up his hand to stop me. Let me speak first, he said. Rachel, I've known you since you were born. I baptized you, confirmed you, watched you grow into a young woman, of apparent faith and character. That's why what you've done is so particularly devastating to me and to this congregation. My throat tightened, but I forced myself to remain silent. When we place our trust in young people, when we hold them up as examples to others, we expect them to honor that trust, Pastor Hayes continued. Ashley made mistakes, serious mistakes that have consequences for her soul and her future. But what you did in response was vindictive and cruel in a way that goes against everything we've tried to teach you about Christian love and forgiveness. The unfairness of his words hit me like a physical blow. Pastor Hayes, with respect, I don't think you publicly humiliated your sister, he interrupted. You shared intimate photographs that should never have been made public. You destroyed her opportunities and caused immeasurable pain to your family. How is any of that consistent with the teachings of Christ? I took a deep breath, trying to organize my thoughts in a way that might help him understand my perspective. Pastor Hayes, Ashley was planning to marry Tyler while living a lie. She'd been cheating on him for years and intended to continue deceiving him for the rest of their lives. How was allowing that to happen consistent with Christian teachings? Pastor Hayes leaned back in his chair, studying me with an expression I couldn't read. Marriage is a sacred institution, Rachel. Yes, Ashley made errors in judgment, but those were between her and God. It wasn't your place to interfere in that relationship or to determine what Tyler needed to know. So you think Tyler should have married her without knowing who she really was? I think Tyler and Ashley should have worked out their problems together, with counseling and prayer and the support of their families. Instead, you made that impossible by turning their private struggles into public spectacle. I felt my carefully maintained composure beginning to crack. Their private struggles? Pastor Hayes, Ashley wasn't struggling with anything. She was deliberately living a double life and laughing about it. She called me pathetic for believing in the values you taught us. She manipulated my boyfriend into cheating on me just to prove that commitment was meaningless. Pastor Hayes was quiet for a long moment, and I could see him processing information that clearly contradicted whatever story he'd heard about the situation. Even if that's true, he said finally, the Bible teaches us to confront sin privately, with love and gentleness. It teaches us to restore our brothers and sisters, not to destroy them. I tried that, I said, though even as the words left my mouth, I wasn't sure they were entirely accurate. Had I really tried to confront Ashley privately? Or had I been gathering ammunition for a public confrontation from the moment I learned the truth? Did you? Pastor Hayes asked, seeming to read my thoughts. Did you go to Ashley with your concerns and give her the opportunity to make things right? Did you follow the biblical model for addressing sin within the family? I thought about all the opportunities I'd had to confront Ashley directly, all the conversations where I could have asked hard questions or demanded honest answers. Instead, I'd chosen to gather evidence and plan her downfall. No, I admitted quietly. I didn't. Then perhaps, Pastor Hayes said gently, you need to examine your own heart and motives before you judge your sisters. The conversation continued for another hour, covering topics like forgiveness, restoration, and the difference between justice and revenge. By the time I left the church, I was more confused than ever about whether I'd done the right thing. That afternoon, I walked to the cemetery where my grandmother was buried, needing the comfort of her presence even though she was no longer there to offer it. Margaret Carter's grave was simple and elegant, marked with a granite headstone that bore her name, dates, and a single line: "She walked in truth." I sat in the grass beside her grave and pulled the purity ring from my finger, examining it in the afternoon sunlight. The silver had developed a patina over the years, and the inscription "True Love Waits" was worn almost smooth from constant wear. "Grandma," I whispered to the headstone, "I don't know if I've honored this ring the way you wanted me to. I thought I was standing up for truth, but maybe I was just being vindictive. I thought I was protecting people, but maybe I was just hurting them." The wind rustled through the oak trees that shaded the cemetery, and for a moment, I could almost imagine it was my grandmother's voice offering comfort and guidance. But the words I needed to hear would have to come from within myself. Over the next few days, I found myself replaying every conversation I'd had with Ashley, every choice I'd made leading up to that night at the party. Had there been another way to handle the situation? Could I have protected Tyler without destroying Ashley? Was there truth to Pastor Hayes' suggestion that my actions had been motivated more by revenge than by righteousness? The answer came from an unexpected source. Connor called me on a Thursday evening, catching me off guard with his familiar voice on the other end of the line. "Rachel," he said, "I heard about what happened with Ashley. Are you okay?" "I'm not sure," I admitted. "Everyone seems to think I handled things badly, and maybe they're right." Connor was quiet for a moment. "Can I tell you something? Something I probably should have told you a long time ago." "Okay." "After we broke up, after you found out about Jessica, I went through a really dark period. I hated myself for what I'd done to you, for throwing away something real for something meaningless. I considered suicide more than once." My heart stopped. "Connor, I had no idea." "The only thing that stopped me was thinking about you," he continued. "About how disappointed you'd be if I gave up instead of trying to become a better person. About how you'd want me to learn from my mistakes instead of being destroyed by them." I felt tears beginning to form in my eyes. "When I heard that you'd exposed Ashley's lies, my first thought was that you'd probably saved Tyler from going through what I went through. From building his life on deception and then having to face the truth later when it would hurt even more." "But people are saying I should have handled it differently," I said. "That I should have given Ashley a chance to come clean on her own." "Maybe," Connor said. "But Rachel, I had dozens of chances to come clean with you, and I never took them. Sometimes people need to be forced to face the truth, even if it's painful." After that conversation, I began to see my actions in a different light. Had I made mistakes in how I handled the situation? Absolutely. Had I acted out of hurt and anger as much as righteousness? Probably. But had I also prevented further harm to people I cared about? I thought so. 2 weeks later, Tyler called the house and asked if he could come visit. When he arrived, he looked healthier than he had in months, with color in his cheeks and clarity in his eyes that spoke of someone who'd found peace after a period of turmoil. "I wanted to update you on what's been happening," he said, as we sat on the front porch swing where he and Ashley used to spend so many evenings planning their future together. "How are you doing?" I asked. "Better," Tyler said honestly. "It's been hard, working through the anger and the sense of betrayal, but I'm grateful that I found out the truth before it was too late." "Have you heard from Ashley?" Tyler nodded. She called me a few days ago. She wanted to apologize and to explain her side of things. What did she say? That she'd felt trapped by everyone's expectations, that she'd never wanted to hurt me but didn't know how to be honest about what she was feeling. She said she was sorry for lying to me, but that she thought marrying me would have been the bigger lie. I considered this. Do you think she was being honest this time? I think so, Tyler said. I think Ashley was always honest about some things and dishonest about others, and the problem was that I never knew which was which. We sat in comfortable silence for a while, watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of pink and gold. Tyler, I said finally, do you think I did the right thing? Exposing her the way I did? Tyler turned to look at me directly. I think you did a hard thing that needed to be done. Could you have done it differently? Maybe. But the result would have been the same eventually. The truth has a way of coming out, and it's usually more painful the longer it's hidden. I keep thinking about what Pastor Hayes said, about confronting sin privately first. Pastor Hayes has never been 20 years old and in love with someone who was lying to him every day, Tyler said gently. It's easy to talk about biblical principles when you're not the one being hurt by someone else's deception. That conversation helped me realize that there might not be a perfect answer to whether I'd handled the situation correctly. Life was messier than the clear moral guidelines I'd been raised with, and sometimes doing the right thing required making imperfect choices, in imperfect circumstances. 3 months into the summer, I received a letter that changed everything. It was from Ashley, postmarked from Atlanta, written in her familiar handwriting on simple white paper. Dear Rachel, it began, I know you probably don't want to hear from me, and I'm not sure I have the right to ask for your attention after everything that's happened. But there are things I need to say, and I hope you'll read this with an open heart. First, I want you to know that I've spent the last few months in therapy, trying to understand why I made the choices I made and how I can do better going forward. It's been painful and humbling, but also necessary. You were right about a lot of things. I was living a lie, and I was hurting people who trusted me. I told myself that I was protecting them from the truth, but I was really protecting myself. From having to face difficult conversations and disappointing people who had expectations of me, I was also angry at you for a long time. Angry that you'd destroyed the life I was trying to build. But I've come to realize that the life I was building was built on a foundation of lies, and it would have collapsed eventually anyway. You just forced it to happen sooner rather than later. I'm not asking for forgiveness, because I know that has to be earned over time through changed behavior, but I am asking for the chance to rebuild our relationship someday, if you're willing. I've enrolled at Georgia State University for the fall semester, starting over as a junior with a new major and a new perspective on what I want my life to look like. I'm studying social work because I want to help other young women who feel trapped by expectations and don't know how to be honest about what they want. I hope you're doing well, and I hope you know that despite everything, I'm proud of you for having the courage to stand up for what you believed in, even when it was hard. That's something I never learned how to do, and it's something I'm still working on. Love, always, Ashley. I read the letter 3 times before the tears started. It wasn't a complete apology or a full acknowledgement of all the harm she'd caused, but it was honest in a way that Ashley had never been before. It was a beginning. That evening, I sat in my room and composed a response, choosing my words carefully. Dear Ashley, I wrote, thank you for your letter. It meant a lot to me to hear that you're working on understanding yourself and your choices better. I want you to know that I've spent the summer questioning whether I handled things the right way. And I've concluded that while I made mistakes in how I approached the situation, I don't regret making sure the truth came out. You're right that it would have collapsed eventually, but Tyler deserved to know who he was marrying before he committed his life to you. I miss my sister, the real one that I'm just now getting to know through your letter. I miss having someone who shares my history and my family, even if we don't share the same values or make the same choices. I'd like to rebuild our relationship too, but it will have to be based on honesty this time. No more pretending to be something you're not, and no more expecting me to protect you from the consequences of your choices. If you're willing to accept those terms, then yes, I'd like to try again. Love, Rachel. The correspondence that followed over the next several months was unlike any communication Ashley and I had ever shared. We wrote honestly about our feelings, our mistakes, our hopes for the future. We didn't agree on everything, and we probably never would, but we were finally talking to each other as real people instead of playing the roles we thought the other expected. When I returned to Tennessee State for my sophomore year, I felt like a different person than the one who'd left Millbrook the year before. I was still wearing my grandmother's purity ring, but I understood now that it represented more than just a commitment to physical purity. It represented a commitment to authentic living, to honest relationships, to the courage to speak truth even when it was unwelcome. My reputation on campus had evolved too. Some people still saw me as the vindictive sister who'd destroyed her sibling for revenge, but others saw me as someone who'd stood up for what was right despite the personal cost. I'd learned to live with both perceptions, understanding that my character would be defined by my future actions more than by past judgments. The most unexpected development came in my junior year, when I received a call from a local television station asking if I'd be willing to share my story as part of a documentary about social media, family secrets, and the ethics of public exposure. The producer had heard about the situation through the ongoing online discussions about digital privacy and personal accountability. I agreed to participate, not because I wanted fame or attention, but because I thought there might be value in helping other people think through similar situations. The documentary that resulted was thoughtful and balanced, presenting multiple perspectives on the complex questions my story raised. The most meaningful response came from a young woman in Texas who wrote to thank me for helping her find the courage to confront her own sister about financial fraud that was destroying their parents' retirement savings. She said my story had shown her that sometimes protecting the people you love requires difficult conversations and painful consequences. By my senior year, Ashley and I had progressed from letters to phone calls to occasional visits. She came to my graduation, sitting with our parents in the audience as I walked across the stage to receive my diploma in English literature with highest honors. Afterward, we all went to dinner together, and for the first time in years, our family felt like a family again. Ashley had changed in ways that went beyond the superficial. She spoke more thoughtfully, listened more carefully, and seemed genuinely interested in other people's experiences, rather than just waiting for her turn to talk. She was working at a women's shelter in Atlanta while finishing her degree, and she talked passionately about helping young women develop the tools to make authentic choices about their lives. I think about that purity ring a lot, she told me as we walked through the campus where so much drama had unfolded. About what Grandma Margaret saw in you that she didn't see in me. What do you think she saw? I asked. Ashley was quiet, for a moment. Integrity, she said finally. The willingness to live according to your principles, even when it cost you something. I was always too concerned with what other people thought to be honest about what I believed or what I wanted. You're being honest now, I pointed out. I'm learning, Ashley said. It's harder than I thought it would be, but it's also more freeing than I expected. As we stood together outside the library where I'd first discovered her secret life, I realized that we'd both learned something valuable from the painful experience we'd shared. Ashley had learned the importance of authenticity and honest communication. I'd learned that standing up for truth sometimes required difficult choices, and that the consequences of those choices had to be faced with courage and grace. The purity ring on my finger caught the late afternoon sunlight, just as it had so many times before. But now it represented something deeper than the promises I'd made as a teenager. It represented the woman I'd become through trial and error, through making hard choices and living with their consequences, through learning that real purity came from the alignment of beliefs and actions, rather than from perfect behavior. Looking back, I could see that the moment in the church sanctuary where this story began, standing at that podium with evidence of Ashley's deception in my hands, had been both an ending and a beginning. It was the end of our childhood relationship, built on assumptions and unexamined trust. But it was also the beginning of an adult relationship built on honesty, accountability, and genuine understanding. The girl who'd once been mocked for her purity ring had learned that true purity wasn't about perfection or moral superiority. It was about the courage to live authentically, to speak truth when it mattered, and to accept the consequences of those choices with grace. And in the end, that was a lesson worth any price we'd had to pay to learn it. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out.